Hey, federal employees. Yesterday, the Supreme Court spent almost 2 hours openly debating whether the president should be able to fire the heads of so called independent agencies whenever he wants. Agencies like the FTC, the NLRB, and yes, the Merit Systems Protection Board. But the conversation ultimately went much farther into the very nature of how agencies operate, trying to predict what could happen, with agencies and separation of powers. I'm Shaun Southworth. At Southworth PC, we represent federal employees and applicants nationwide. And I listened straight through the arguments in Trump versus Slaughter. It was kind of like my Super Bowl. So let me give you the bottom line first. The court's conservative majority sounds very interested in expanding presidential control over independent agencies. They're not voting yet, but the questions they ask tell you a lot about where this could go. Not super far, but not good in my mind. Here's the fight in plain English. For about 90 years, we've lived under a rule from a case called Humphrey's Executor. That case said Congress can create certain agencies whose leaders, the president, can't just fire on a whim. They can only be removed for cause, things like serious misconduct or neglect of duty. The idea was to insulate places like the FTC from raw politics. Well, yesterday, the lawyer arguing for President Trump basically said that's wrong. He told the court that all executive power belongs to the president, and that means the president must be able to remove these commissioners at will. When Justice Kagan pressed him, so you're saying the NLRB goes down, the MSPB goes down, he didn't really back off. He just said that would restore democratic accountability. His phrase. On the other side, several justices were clearly worried about what that logic would mean in the real world. Justice Jackson, she's always about the real world in my mind, pushed on something a lot of you already are anxious about. If every new president can sweep out the experts, the economists, the scientists, the labor folks, and replace them with loyalists who don't know anything, what does that do to the people who rely on those agencies to be neutral? Like the rest of the country. He also had justices asking a scarier version of the same question. If you say these commissioners must be under full presidential control because they exercise, quote, executive power, why doesn't that logic creep downward to other officers and eventually to employees who also, quote, wield executive power all over the place, to use Justice Kagan's phrase? Maybe you too, do you wield executive control? Now, practically, what does this mean for you today at your desk? Well, right now, nothing has changed. Your civil service rights, they're good to go. Your union contract, your grievance procedures, they're still in place if you still have them at your agency. This case is about the top layer. Somebody asked what I mean by that. I mean the people who sit on boards and commissions. But if the court guts or overrules that 1935 precedent, you should be absolutely prepared for more litigation aimed at the structure of agencies that protect federal employees, like the MSPB and NLRB. There's already cases on those queued up. The justices probably won't issue a decision until late spring, and they're hearing a related case in January about whether the president can fire a Federal Reserve governor. Maybe they just issue one decision that addresses a lot of these issues. So we're in the middle of a long technical fight about how much independence a civil service ecosystem is allowed to have from the White House. My goal here isn't to scare you. Some of you thought that. It's to make sure you're not blindsided and to understand the historical importance of this moment and the urgency. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you feel safer with strong independent agencies, even if that makes them less directly answerable to the president? Or do you think elections should give the president the power to clean house at the top of these agencies? If you've dealt with the MSPB, NLRB, or another commission, did they feel like neutral referees or already particularly political or slanted a bit? And if the court does expand presidential power here, what's your biggest fear or your biggest hope for the federal workplace? Thank you, everybody, for your support. Take care and have a great day.